Hey everyone, Cody here, and today I want to talk about the thorn in the flesh and just share what verses stuck out to me in my reading today. So today we're in 2 Corinthians 12, and it's verses 6 through 10. This concerns the thorn in Paul's side. So I want to read it first and then just talk about kind of my thoughts on it. All right, starting in verse 6. Even if I should choose to boast, I would not be a fool, because I would be speaking the truth. But I refrain, so no one will think more of me than is warranted by what I do or say. So first off, in this chapter, Paul is already saying that other people are boasting. And mostly it's these super apostles or false apostles. And they're boasting about all these things they've done. And he's saying, these guys are boasting about the stuff that they've done, but I've done even better because, he was actually a spirit-filled Christian. And so, but he's saying that, even if I was going to boast, I'm not going to, right? I want my words and my actions to speak for themselves. All right, moving into 7. Or because of these surpassingly great revelations. So, and also things, God has revealed things to him, and these other guys are making stuff up. All right. Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times, I'm going to come back to the thorn in the flesh and my thoughts on it. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. And this is very important. 3 times, specifically 3 times. Not, he asked over and over again. Not, he only asked 1 time. But 3 times. All right, moving into 9. But he said to me, and this is God, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, and in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things. First off, let's talk about the thorn itself, mentioned in 7 and 8. So there's a lot of different opinions about what the thorn in the flesh was. Some people think it's, it was a physical affliction, like he was physically afflicted, and God would not heal him of it, and it was to keep him humble. Other people think that it was almost like a spiritual attack, like an oppression that the enemy had against him. So, he was just kind of spiritually attacked over and over again. Other people have also argued, that it was like a constant attack, like physical attack. Like maybe he kept physically getting attacked or insulted or whatever it was. So there's a lot of different opinions on what the thorn in the flesh actually was. Personally, I would say I would probably lean towards physical, like a physical malady. That would be kind of my assumption. And the reason I would say that is because Paul, at this point, would have seen people healed of many different things. And so to see someone healed, but then to ask God to heal you of something and him not to do it is extremely frustrating. And if you've been a Christian for any length of time and you've seen healing, or if you've prayed for people to see them healed and you've seen the healing, then you know that God does move and he does heal still to this day. But if you see other people healed, but you yourself are not healed, especially if you're dealing with an affliction for a long amount of time, like I've been praying for my neck and my back for years. I have spinal arthritis. I've got a lot of messed up stuff in my head from an injury when I was a kid. And I've prayed that God would heal me of that he would fix that. I've had other people pray for healing over me. Still not fixed, right? I'm not frustrated about it, but it is frustrating because I deal with it every day, right? It affects my everyday, life. And so if it was a spiritual attack, I could see that as well. But I think that he's probably constantly under spiritual attack anyway because he's doing so much for the kingdom, and he's constantly preaching the gospel. And I also think that if it was just attacks as in from other people, I think again that's probably also some kind of that's going to be like a constant for Paul anyway at this point, preaching the gospel, which is counter to what the Jews believed, or the people in Corinth, or Asia, all of that area. Like it goes against what a lot of the people already believed. So I think that the most likely answer is a physical malady. But let's move on. So, and you can, leave your comment in the comment section. Like, what do you think it was? So I'd love to hear. Anyway, moving on. So 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Now, I think that 3 is an interesting number because I'm wondering if, and I haven't read a commentary on this, so I'm just kind of shooting in the dark here. I'm wondering if 3 is significant because 3 would have been kind of Paul's number that he would have assumed would have been enough for God to have healed it, if that makes sense. So it's like the Bible tells us with prayer and petition to give all of our requests to God, right? And we should just pray for everything on all occasions. So, he probably would pray for things over and over and over again if something wasn't resolved. And so my assumption is that he probably, prayed at least the 3 times. Now, it's possible he just figured by the 3rd time God wasn't going to do it, or leading into the next verse, it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." It's possible that by the 3rd time he prayed for it, then God responded. Now, the number 3 is very significant. We also see that with Peter and his denials. It was 3 days that Christ was in the tomb. So there's, 3 is a very, it's a very important number. But we won't delve into the significance of that. My point here is that, he did ask God multiple times to, take it from him. But then, God answered him and said, "No, I'm not going to do this." And I think that that's also interesting, that God responded to his request saying, "No, you're going to keep it because my grace is made sufficient. My grace is sufficient, but my power is made perfect in your weakness." Now, the rest of it is just Paul saying, that he's going to boast in that. So he's not going to boast in himself. He's going to boast in the fact that God, his grace is sufficient, number one. So God, he is basically giving him grace, regardless of that fact that Paul had, that thorn in his flesh. God's grace was still sufficient on him. The other aspect of this is that because his power is made in our weakness, when we are powerful, and I mean this in, both in the sense of physical power of, we're powerful, we're healthy, maybe we're wealthy, maybe we have influence, and also just powerful in the eyes of the world, right? Maybe we have those second things, right? The influence or the power, like a ruler, or we're rich or something. So when we have either a physical power, like we're physically healthy or physically strong or whatever, or if we're powerful in non-material things, the problem that comes with that is we become self-sufficient, right? And so we can tend to rely on ourselves when we can do things on our own. And what that does is then we start to boast in the things that we're doing, and we take our eyes off of God, and we stop giving him the glory, and we start giving it to ourselves. And so when we are powerful, so to speak, in both physically or in the eyes of the world, then we have a lot of sway, and we almost think of ourselves as a god. Now, we may not, literally say that, like, "Oh, I am God," but we put ourselves in the place of God, because then we start to rely on ourselves, and we're not relying on God. And so the point out of all of this is that when we're weak, so when we are, at the lowest point, when we are kind of low on the totem pole, we tend to rely on God more. And so Paul is saying, I delight in weakness and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulty. Think about this for a second. These are all things that break people down. These are all things that take people of high position and put them in a low position in life. And so Paul's like, I boast in that stuff because then Christ can use me more. And it's harder for God to use us if we're just kind of doing our own thing and only worrying about ourselves and what we want to accomplish. But when we're weak, when we're at the lowest end and the world is kind of beating us down, we're a lot more open to God speaking to us, to using us, to even relying on Him as opposed to ourselves. So sometimes we need that thorn in our flesh. And sometimes I think that God allows thorns in our flesh that we don't really know that they're thorns in our flesh. We just think maybe God doesn't love us. Maybe we think that God is punishing us for something we did. And it's possible that some of the things that we have happen to us are natural consequences of the things we've done. But a lot of times it is a thorn in our flesh because God has allowed it to humble us, right? And so sometimes He allows that suffering or the things to happen, the challenges, the difficulties, persecution even. He allows it because we turn to Him more, right? And so He knows us. He knows our hearts. He knows if we're going to turn to Him or not. And this is why some people never turn to God and they have everything they could ever want in life because He allows it. He's like, okay, well, you're not going to turn to me anyway, so you may as well go all in. But He does know that if maybe I humble this person just enough, they'll turn back to me. He knows. And sometimes He humbles us and we don't see that. We actually think the opposite. We think that God doesn't love us because He allows those things. When in reality, He's trying to give us like a wake-up call or to get us to reach out to Him. So, I don't know. That's about it. That's all I've got. Those were my thoughts. If you have any additional comments or you think differently about any of this stuff, hey, let me know. I'd love to hear it in the comments. And I appreciate you watching. I will see you guys in the next one. And that's it. Bye.